Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about Magnet Warriors. Now, initially when I had attempted to record this video, my camera broke, so to buy a new one you're going to have to deal with the background being around for a while. We'll see if it works out or not. But today we're going to be talking about Magnet Warriors, which, looking at the list in front of you, you can see is a supremely budget-friendly deck. Zero main deck URs that are necessary for the deck. All of these ones are purely extra. You can cut those 100%. Zero main deck URs, and in terms of the extra deck, the only URs you actually need as such would be the Naturia Beast, which I think is very important, and Dragite. Everything else is completely optional in terms of URs. This is a very fun deck. Honestly, I had a whole bunch of fun when I was playing it. I haven't properly played around with the Adamantipator cards in the past, and they blend so well with your Magnet Warriors. Being able to utilize these guys to go into the single worst card in the planet for Runic, Naturia Beast, being able to infinitely negate spell cards, as well as a few other really powerful boss monsters. Ultimately, it's a whole bunch of fun. I'm not going to talk too much about it right at the start, but we are going to have a card for card profile at the end, so if that is something you want to see and listen to, feel free to stick around to the end. I would recommend watching the gameplay because it's going to show how the two sort of archetypes and all sort of intertwine. It is relatively simple, but it's very sort of combo heavy, so do pay attention to the gameplay. It's going to really help contextualize a lot of these monsters' effects when it comes to watching the deck profile. You'll understand a lot more what you're listening to once you've seen it in action. This is by no stretch of the imagination a completely finished and optimized list. The gameplay you're seeing is taking place in casual because it is a casual deck. It's not so much something that you'll be seeing massive amounts of success with in ranked because it isn't the best strategy in the world just yet, but I am continuing to work on it, and once I have a version of the deck that is ready for the ranked ladder, I will be coming back with it. So, and again, by that I mean like Platinum, Diamond rank. If you want to play this in Gold, Silver and below, be my guest. It is going to be a little bit dicey in Platinum and higher, but again, anyway, I'm not going to sit here and ramble on at the very beginning of the video, so if you do like seeing what you're seeing here, these sort of cool deck profiles for lesser known decks and lesser seen decks, and you want to see anything more like that, feel free to stick around and subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything, and we're getting closer and closer to our 1,000 subscriber goal. We are less than 50 away. We were planning on hitting 1,000 for the end of January, and it looks like that is going to be a reality at this rate. So thank you so much to anyone who has subscribed and is constantly showing support. And if you're sticking around, you have been watching videos and you're not subscribed, well, why not? You may as well while you're here. It doesn't cost you anything. And with that being said, let's get into the gameplay. Alrighty, getting into game 1 here. We've got a pretty solid hand. We're going to begin with Epsilon the Magnet Warrior to pitch a warrior from deck to graveyard. Then we're going to go into Adamantipator Researcher to summon a monster from the top of our deck. We hit the Delta there, which is a very solid hit, bringing Delta out to pitch another magnet from deck to grave. Now by using Magnetic Field, we can bring back our Alpha from the graveyard to search our deck for Berserkion. That means we have Alpha, Beta and Gamma all in play, meaning our Berserkion is alive. So we're going to keep that in our hand for follow-up here for the next turns. We're going to go into Gallant Granite now, ditching one of our magnets to graveyard to search our deck for the Adamantipator Seeker, which we can now summon out to the field. Seeker then checks the top of our deck yet again for another summonable rock monster, which the majority of our deck is. This version of it that you're seeing here was not as turbo heavy as the version we ended up on, so you noticed a few hand traps and everything there that we ended up cutting from the list. It's just an alternative way of playing it, but the spirit of the deck is still here. Raptite then comes out, checks the top of our deck yet again, hitting a analyzer there. You can see from how the fact we're only really hitting 1 or 2 magnets each of these times why we ended up cutting as many hand traps as we did. We wanted to keep the deck as consistently turbo as possible. We didn't want to waste time on anything. We're going to hit Beta here. Beta searches our deck for another Gamma just to be used as cost for Berserkion. Synchro summon off into the Riser Dragon. Riser Dragon then pitches from deck to graveyard the Adamantipator Crystal Dragite, which means we now have a water monster in graveyard for Dragite's effect, making it a spell and trap card negate, as well as changing our Riser Dragon to a level 3 to be used in an Exceed summon for the Cicada King. Then we're going to summon out our Blanc Dragon as well, just to finish off the board. We could technically have Link summoned using these two and like gone even more crazy, but we've used all of our Adamantipator cards effects already this turn, so having the passive protection from the Blanc Dragon is probably better. So we decided we're going to leave it here. We've got a monster negate and the Cicada King. If you don't know what this card does, we're about to use it. He activates his Aliber, we activate the Cicada King, negate his effect and boost our defense by 500. So that's a decent monster negate there. And we still have our Dragite for a spell or trap card negate. So that branded fusion, you can think again, you're not a chance you're going to get that to resolve here. Negate the branded fusion as well. We have our Berserkion in our hand for follow-up, protection from the Block Dragon, and our opponent scoops it up. Really brutal shutdown there. Not an awful lot our opponent could have done about that. So again, it pretty much is as simple as that. The main difference between the Cicada King and the Gorgonic Guardian is that Cicada King can technically be chain blocked. So Gorgonic Guardian may have been better in that instance, but again, either way, the Gorgonic Guardian needs a rock monster. We didn't have a second rock. That's why we went into Cicada King. And that's pretty much it. So again, if you don't know what any of those cards do, if that was a lot of action for you all in one go, don't worry about it. We do cover the entire thing at the end of the video, so just stay tuned, stick around for that. And just keep on watching the next sort of few games, and it'll all sort of slowly piece together as you're watching. Alrighty, game 2 here, and we have a bit of a slower hand, but we're going to start off with Magnetic Field. We're going to go into Alpha, the Electromagnet Warrior, searching out our second Berserkion then. And we're going to go into Researcher here. Now, Researcher does get negated, unfortunately, so that really does lock down a lot of the deck's combo potential. But we do luckily have Magnetic Induction in our hand, which we can now use. Magnetic Induction then will summon out Delta the Magnet Warrior straight from our deck, which will then pitch Gamma from deck to graveyard. We'll now resummon. We could have done Beta there, which would have been better, but, you know, no point crying over it. We're going to go into Raptite now, which will yet again check the top 5 cards of our deck and summon one of them out to the field. Luckily, we hit the Beta there. Well, we summoned the Researcher because we realistically didn't really need to go into anything else. We can get the Beta on the following turn by using Gamma to go into Delta, which will then pitch it. So we can still get the Beta. We went in the Researcher just so we can have the Naturia Beast on the off chance we're playing against something like Runic. Our opponent basically opens up by Kaijuing us, so it wouldn't have mattered what we opened up with. We're gonna sort of speed through our opponent's plays here. This is standard sort of Lyrilusk Exceed action going into the Starling. Starling then using its effect. We're gonna activate our Gamma now to summon Epsilon from deck. Epsilon will pitch the Beta to summon the Alpha. Alpha then is, sorry, pitch Beta to summon Delta. Delta is going to pitch Gamma. It's going to take a minute to learn all of the names, so it is. Even I sometimes get mixed up on them. But now we have all of the materials needed in our graveyard for our Berserkion follow-up. So we're pretty confident. As long as we survive this turn, we're A-okay. So we're going to let our opponent do their plays. They're going to go into yet another Exceed here. There is the Nightingale, which can attack multiple times. They're going to do just that by swinging at us. That is fine. They're going to also inflict an additional 3,900 by swinging into the Kaiju. Now, the Adamantipator Analyzer comes out to hand. Nightingale's going to detach a material to protect all of his monsters from destruction this turn and prevent himself from taking damage. That's fine. We're going to resummon Beta using our Magnetic Field, grabbing Delta from the deck. Then we're going to link summon off in the Nightmare Phoenix. We want to force him to use this back row card just in case it's something that might stop our Berserkion. It turns out being called by the grave, so we don't really care about that, to be honest. He's going to banish one of our Deltas. That's fine. Suits us. Then we have still the 2 level 4s on the field. We're going to use all of those plus his Nightingale to go into the Underworld Goddess. Now that's going to permanently negate his Starling, meaning no more effect from it. Our Raptite's going to check the top 5 cards of our deck yet again. We're going to summon out Seeker. Seeker's going to check the top 5, and we're going to start chaining these summons together. In this case, we had a Doki Doki, so we'll summon it. We're going to normal summon the Analyzer, which will check the top cards of our deck again. I think on this occasion we only hit a Doki Doki as well, which isn't very useful to us. So we're just going to go into the Dragite now. Dragite's going to use its effect, check the top 5 cards of our deck. We hit 5 rocks in a row off of the Dragite, bounce 5 cards back to your opponent's hand if they had 5, but they don't. We go into Barkion here just to give ourselves a bit of extra attacking power for the follow-up turn, and then we're just going to basically pass it on. This also negates Revolt if they decide to go into some Tri-Brigade plays, but they can't. They're just done. Any effect they would have activated to revive a card from the grave was negated. Our Barkion was going to infinitely negate their traps. They just didn't have enough cards left to make a decent play out of it. So it's pretty much as simple as that, to be honest. Not exactly as picture perfect as game number 1. Sometimes things go awry. Sometimes maybe you don't make the right decision every single time, because it is quite it's a deck of branching paths. It's going to take a long time to sort of get it right, but those branching paths also offer the deck an absolute ton of versatility, which is very, very important. So there's a myriad of different ways you can play it, myriad of different plays you can make within each version of it. That was just how this particular game went. We were lucky enough to get a win, despite having a pretty decent board. Like, we went first, we set up our beast, and even going second we had tons of follow-up. We didn't even use our Berserkion, we didn't even need it. That's how far ahead we were. On top of everything we currently had on the field and summoned, we also had Berserkion, which is nuts to think about. But yes, that's it for game number 2. Let's get into game number 3. Alright, getting into game 3, and we're going second, against Triple D. Now, this is going to be a bit hectic. For anyone who doesn't know what Triple D does, join the club. They sort of do a bit of, they sort of do everything, I'll be honest with you. They're going to summon Copernicus from the hand here, go into their Triple D King. This is the guy who gets the whole thing started by setting your Pendulum Scales directly from the deck, which is nuts. They're going to activate their Ragnarok to resummon Genghis from the grave. Their DD Necroslame is going to banish from the grave to fusion summon out a second Genghis. 2 level 6s will give them their Way of High King Caesar, and with that they're going to pass turn. Now, we don't know what this face down card is. We know Triple D's play Headhunt, which basically negates and steals an opponent's monster, so we do need to be wary of that. Our opponent also has a double summon negate here, so we're going to try and summon Analyzer. We're going to get negated and we're going to get destroyed. That's why we went Analyzer first. Because this guy can only be special summoned using its own effect if your opponent controls monsters. We're going to go Reasoning, which our opponent actually allows. I guess they just betted on getting it right. They went level 4, and they were unfortunately wrong. So Seeker comes on out to the field. Before we use Seeker's effect, we decided to summon Doki Doki, and we're going to activate Doki Doki's effect to bait out this negate. It was correct of him to do this. The Doki Doki negate was pretty big. But we really wanted to keep this guy on the field, and we're going to test our luck by checking the top of our deck yet again, purely because he's a tuner. We wanted to keep the tuner on the field. If this guy negated but didn't destroy, I probably would have used Seeker, but because he destroys, I wanted to keep the Seeker on the field. We do have the Crystal in hand, which isn't very good. It's not very useful in the hand. You would rather pitch it from deck to graveyard. We check the top 5 cards of our deck here. We're going to summon out Delta from among them. Delta pitch Alpha. Now we're going to use Magnetic Induction to summon Epsilon from our deck. Epsilon will then pitch the Gamma and resummon the Alpha. Alpha searches our deck for Berserkion, and now we've got some materials to get gaming. So we're going to use 2 to go into Raptite. Raptite's going to get us another special summon from the deck here, depending on what we can hit. There's another Seeker there. I don't think we're hitting anything new, unfortunately, so we're going to bring out Seeker just to go into Barkion. Because we still believe that this card here might be Headhunt, which is a trap card, so we want Barkion here to negate the trap. We're going to summon out Berserkion. Berserkion, banish our Delta from the grave to pop the High King Caesar. High King Caesar searches on Destruction for his Dark Contract, and our Berserkion gets another pop, and we're going to take out one of his skills. So taking out the Oblivion King Abyss Ragnarok means that we can swing into his Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh, when destroyed, will summon Siegfried in defense, but that's not enough defense to stop our Barkion from destroying it, and we're going to pass back. So we're feeling pretty confident in terms of what we have here. The only downside is our opponent, they have this Dark Contract that they searched for. They're going to use the contract to search for Griffin. Griffin then can special summon itself so long as he controls a Triple D monster, and he just had a second Ragnarok in hand. Crazy. Most people don't even play 2 Ragnarok. This guy had a second one in his hand, which is very, very unfortunate for us. That means he can go into his Gilgamesh. The entire point behind our play and the play we made was that this guy, to use his effect, needs to be able to set 2 monsters in the Pendulum Zones. So by leaving him with 1, we're taking out the most valuable one, which is Ragnarok, while also leaving him unable to use Gilgamesh's effect. But the madman, the mad lad just had it in hand. He just had everything. Genghis is going to come out here. He's going to Pendulum Summon out from the extra deck, triggering Copernicus and Griffin. Griffin's going to basically draw him a card. Copernicus is Foolish Burial, so he's going to send one from deck to graveyard. He's going to go into the Way of King Caesar. That's going to trigger Genghis's effect to summon the monster that he just pitched to the grave. He's going to go into Marksman Tell, and he's going to use Tell and the Gilgamesh to go into another Gilgamesh, purely so he can use Marksman Tell's effect to pitch the Double D Vice Typhon from deck to graveyard. There's a lot happening right now, so if you're lost, I don't blame you. There is a lot happening. He's going to go Divisor King here. He's going to activate Vice Typhon, fuse 2 in the grave to go into the High King Genghis. Divisor King's going to pop Berserkion by returning the Dark Contract from Graveyard back to deck. Our Berserkion triggers here, whenever it's destroyed by card effect, you will summon back the 3 different magnets from your banish zone that you banished to summon it, meaning you basically get to search your deck again to set the play up again. So we were feeling pretty confident until our Headhunt turned out to be called by the grave. So that is really, really unfortunate. That leaves us in a very precarious situation where we don't get to resummon all of our monsters. His field is a lot bigger than ours. He's going to synchro summon off into Baron de Fleur. Baron de Fleur, of course, pops our Raptide. He's going to use this opportunity now, swing into Barkion, take it out. All of the damage he would inflict this turn is, of course, halved because of the effect of Abyss Ragnarok. But still, we really need to top deck a useful card here. And it really needs to be something that can be inherently summoned. The only card that can really truly help us right now is Block Dragon, because it can be inherently summoned. It can't be destroyed by any of this nonsense. But we top deck Epsilon, so that's game. Nothing we can do about that. We try summoning Epsilon, we try summoning anything else, we just get negated and destroyed by Baron. And generally speaking, we are very sad. And it's as simple as that. So unfortunate. What are you going to do? You can't win them all. Our opponent went absolutely nuts there. Triple D does, in fact, go burr whenever they have the right hand. So our opponent just played well. Got a little bit lucky having the double Ragnarok, but I'm not going to blame it on luck. Our opponent was playing an absolute Chad deck, and he won. He deserved the win. Fair play to him. Let's get into game number 4. Already getting into game 4, we have a pretty interesting hand. We've got a lot of gas in this hand, depending on how well it goes. We're going to Doki Doki ditch a Seeker for a Seeker. Seeker's going to check the top 5 cards of our deck, and summon a rock among them. We're going to go Alpha to search our deck for Berserkion. Then we're going to Synchro 2 into Naturia Beast, and I think we're just going to set 1 and pass it there. So the issue of a hand like this is it has a lot of beginner options, but because we don't have like the Researcher, because we didn't really have things like Epsilon, the amount of things we could possibly have done with this was rather limited. We only had a level 3 on our field, we didn't have any level 4s, otherwise we could have gone Raptide to try continuing the combo, but again, sometimes that's just the way it works out. We just went Beast, and Beast is still pretty solid because it allows us to infinitely negate our opponent's spell cards. So we just pitch 2 from top of the deck to the grave, and we can negate any time they activate a spell, so we are going to negate their Foolish Burial. I don't believe from here they have very many plays. They go Rescue Cat, and we negate the Rescue Cat using Call by the Grave. So that was a pretty lucky hit for us in terms of what our opponent was actually playing. And this is the side of the deck that we're still experimenting on and we're trying to make as valid as possible. The magnets themselves don't have the gas. That's where Doki Doki and Adamantipator's and everything come in, so that's what we're still sort of experimenting with. Gamma's going to bring out the Beta. Beta will search our deck for yet another Gamma just to be used as cost. Doki Doki pitches the Delta to summon the Analyzer. Then we're going to go into the Gorgonic Guardian here just to free up a monster zone on our field so we can use our Analyzer to summon another monster from our deck. We hit the Beta, so Beta's going to come on out. We're going to Synchro into Raptide. Raptide's going to search our deck yet again for another summon off the top. We've got a few different options here, including the Researcher, which I believe we pick, so we can use her effect yet again, and this is the gas. Adamantipator's is the gas. That's what gets the whole thing running. We summon another Beta because we didn't have a lot of options. We're going to Synchro into 8, our Chaos Ruler, to pitch the top 5 of our deck to the graveyard, seeing if we can seeing if we can get any magnets. We do get a couple. We're going to banish 3, we're going to banish another 3, we're going to summon out Berserkion and Block Dragon, and we're just going to beat this man's ass. Look at this board. This is amazing. He's going to go the Golden Sword Soul, which I thought was pretty interesting. We're just going to negate and destroy it, and then we're just going to finish the game with our Chaos Ruler. So pretty brutal. The deck does have an awful lot. Again, its opening hands, right, can sometimes be a little bit dodgy, right? It's not always perfect. Sometimes your deck can be a little bit overly reliant upon its normal summon, depending on whether or not you have things like the Researcher or the Seeker or the ability to summon those cards. That's why we're playing quite a few things to reduce that reliance upon the normal summon, like Reasoning, like Induction, like well, Gamma is still kind of sort of reliant upon the normal summon. But there are quite a few ways around that within the deck, but you are occasionally going to get hands that do rely very heavily upon that normal summon, meaning if you get Impermed, if you get Ashed, if you get Veilered, life suddenly becomes very difficult. That's the main thing that's sort of holding it back from being super competitive. But that's the thing that we're still working on. So let's get into the deck profile. We're going to talk a wee bit more about that, and we're going to be going through the full deck card for card. So here is the deck, and again, if you watched the gameplay, I'm assuming you did, the plays behind the deck is very much trying to spam your magnets out as quickly as you can, which sounds simple, and it is simple. The entire deck is based around the spamming of monsters out to your field, as well as the filling up of your graveyard. That's the entire idea, because you have a few big bad boss monsters that will take full advantage of your graveyard. Now, in some of the gameplays, you might have saw cards that we're not using in this finished version. Like I said, we have been building this over time, and we will continue to build it leading up to the next video that will be coming out inevitably. I believe at the time of recording, we're like a day or two away from the Furion launch. In fact, it may actually already be out, so that's where our attention is going to be shifting to as soon as that's out, but this stuff is still very, very important. Now, how does the deck actually work? We're going to separate this out into several engines. The first thing I want to talk about, I'm going to remove, of course, the extra cards first. We've got Double Call by the Grave and Triple Forbidden Droplet. We've got the Nibiru, which I would argue is almost core, because it's so easily searchable off of Granite. But again, I never actually used it, so you can cut this card if you want. So this is what I would describe as core. It's a very, very hefty deck. You can mess around with ratios. You can cut certain cards down if you want to, maybe to sort of suit your needs. Maybe something closer to this, if that suits your fancy. But in my testing, I've just been going whole hog on the whole package. But yes, what does the deck actually do? Talking about the magnets first. So the magnets are all focused around three here: Alpha, Beta, Gamma. That's the three main magnets. What do? They all have an effect on normal summon or special summon, and then they have an effect that activates during your opponent's turn. Alpha, when summoned, searches your deck for Berserkion. Beta, when summoned, will search your deck for any of your other small magnets. Gamma, on summon, will special summon another Magnet Warrior from your hand. So Gamma is how you're going to be going into your extra deck plays a lot of the time. So basically, searches for big, searches for small, summons another magnet. Then you've got your two level 4 magnets, Delta, which on summon will send a Magnet Warrior from deck to graveyard. And then Epsilon, which does the same thing except sort of stronger. It will send a magnet from deck to graveyard, and if you already have another magnet in your grave of a different name, then you get to summon that other magnet to the field. So, for example, if I have Beta in my graveyard, I summon Epsilon and send Gamma. Well, after sending Gamma, I now get the opportunity to summon Beta. That's generally how it works. And how are you utilizing these guys? Apart from them being caught off of your Adamantipator cards, all three of these small Magnet Warriors, the Electromagnet Warriors, they have the ability to, during your opponent's turn, tribute themselves to summon a level 4 magnet from your deck. So they'll summon either Epsilon or Delta. So that's generally how they're being used. And what is the end goal of all of this? It is Berserkion. So Berserkion will summon itself by banishing a Alpha, Beta, and Gamma. It is an inherent summon, which is very, very powerful. It means its summon can't be negated by anything short of a Solemn Judgment. So that's really good. It doesn't begin a chain. So he can be summoned very easily, and secondary to that, he also has the ability to banish Magnet Warriors from your graveyard in order to pop a card in your opponent's field, and that's not limited to once per turn. You can do that as many times as you have magnets in the graveyard. So you can, if you're bringing him out on turn 2 or turn 3, he's popping 2 cards, 3 cards, 4 cards if you went ham, and being able to just mop up a board entirely. Really, really brutal, really powerful card. So that's how the magnets themselves work. How does the rest of the deck work around it? Sorry, there's also the 2 magnet spell cards. Magnet Induction is really brutal. This is actually the card that inspired me to build the deck again. It's been a long time since I built magnets, and I saw someone play this card, and I thought, I have to play it. I have to play magnets. So I brought it back. This, basically, if you control a Magnet Warrior, you get to summon another Magnet Warrior from your deck, which adds to the combo potential so much. There is a small other effect where it says that your Magnet Warriors can't be destroyed by battle or card effects during the turn in which it's used. So that is kind of useful. It's an ignition spell card. It's a normal spell, which means it can't be used during your opponent's turn. So it's not broken or anything like that. But it means, if you need to crash, if your opponent's got like a Baron negate or something like that, it means that at the very least your cards won't be getting destroyed. once they're negated. So Induction, really good combo potential. And lastly, Magnetic Field, of course, adding to that combo potential even more. If you control a Magnet Warrior and there's a Magnet Warrior in your graveyard, summon the Magnet Warrior from the grave, which yet again adds to the combo potential of the deck. Another small thing is if one of your Earth Rock monsters battles an opponent's monster and your opponent's monster is still on the field after the battle, you get to bounce that card back to your opponent's hand. So if you want to just crash one of your small magnets into an opponent's Mirror Jade, by all means, your magnet gets destroyed, their Mirror Jade gets sent back to the extra deck. So there's definitely a few plays that can be made off of that. It's pretty funny, but most of the time this is here simply for the free Monster Reborn every single turn. And that's how that's the magnets. So the magnets are constantly searching, summoning, sending, and popping your opponent's cards. That's how they work. How do we make it as effective as possible? Well, the rest of the deck is basically built around milling out or special summoning the magnets directly from your deck. First of all is Doki Doki. Doki Doki, discard a rock monster to special summon another rock monster from your deck that has the same attribute and level as the monster you pitch, and it's not restricted by name either, so you can send a monster to summon another copy of the same monster. You saw that in the gameplay where we discarded a Seeker to summon a Seeker. So Doki Doki will grant you access not only to additional magnets directly from the deck, but will also grant you access to your Adamancipator cards should that come up, and your Adamancipators then will chain into your magnets very effectively. Speaking of which, we're going to start talking about those with Seeker. Seeker I think is the weakest out of them, but he's still really brutal. He can special summon himself if you control an Adamancipator monster already, which does make him a little bit slower than the other two, but that's still really good if you do already have one of those. Basically, all of the Adamancipators do the same thing. They check the top 5 cards of your deck. If you hit a non-tuner rock monster among those cards, you summon that monster to your field. So Seeker, Researcher, Analyzer all do the same thing. Their only differences between them is how they summon themselves. Seeker is special summoned when you control another Adamancipator. Researcher is summoned if you control a rock monster, which is much more powerful, much more generic. And then Analyzer is special summoned when only your opponent controls a monster. So this guy's like a Cyber Dragon. But yes, they all do the exact same thing. They're all tuners. These two are level 2s, this guy's a level 4, so the tuner aspect of it comes up a lot as well. You're typically going to be summoning out your Naturia Beast off of these guys, or summoning out Raptite to go into even more plays. So yeah, the tuner aspect of it, being able to check the top 5 cards of your deck, summon magnets out, summon other Adamancipators out, it just basically causes a whole chain reaction of summoning. Analyzer, it's the same thing. So Adamancipator Crystal Dragite is purely here to satisfy the conditions for your Dragite to have a water monster in graveyard. Otherwise, this guy doesn't have a Spell or Trap card negate, and his value is greatly diminished. So this guy is purely here to satisfy that condition. I nearly caught. But yes, he's basically here. He can be special summoned off of the Adamancipators. If he does, you get to draw an extra card. Other than that, you're usually just going to be sending it to the graveyard off of Foolish Burial or off of your Shooting Razor Dragon. And in terms of the main deck, we have Block Dragon. Block Dragon is, I mean, if you're playing a deck that plays Earth monsters or Rock monsters, you have to play Block Dragon. It's simply too powerful not to play it. Just banish 3 Earth monsters from your graveyard or your hand to special summon this card from your hand or graveyard. You probably don't need to play 2 of this. You can probably get away with 1, but he's just so brutal. So you get to special summon him out basically for free. Then while he's on the field, your rock monsters can only be destroyed by battle. They cannot be destroyed by any other means other than battle. And if he ever goes to the graveyard by any means, you get to search your deck for up to 3 rock monsters as long as their levels total 8. So you can grab, what, 2 magnets and an Adamancipator. That is insane. Block Dragon is crazy. This card deserves to be either limited to 1 or banned. Probably banned, to be honest. It's pretty, it's nuts. It really is just nuts. Foolish Burial, for obvious reasons. And lastly, Reasoning. Reasoning is just a free special summon. Not a lot of people guess it right. You've got a few different levels in your deck, not a ton of them. Most of the time your opponent's going to be guessing a higher level because they're expecting to catch a higher level card, or they're going to be guessing level 4 because they're expecting Adamancipators. Very rarely do they guess 3, which means most of the time your magnets are just easy summons. But yeah, Generally speaking, it's either going to give you a free monster on the board, or it's just going to fill your graveyard with materials. Either way, you're winning, right? That's the main deck. Again, the main deck is very, very simple. It is very much, here are your magnets, here is your turbo. And then it's just magnets, turbo. That's pretty much it. Getting into the extra deck then is where it gets a little bit spicy. You've got Naturia Beast. This is one of the big bads of the deck. Only 2200 attack, which means that it can be sort of beat over quite easily. But so long as this guy's face up, spell cards are illegal. Anytime your opponent activates a spell card, send 2 cards from the top of your deck to the graveyard, negate that spell, which is huge considering your entire deck takes full advantage of cards being in your graveyard. So you're actually gaining advantage by sending cards from deck to graveyard, and you're also infinitely negating your opponent's spells. This card is nuts. Love to see it. Barkion is somewhat similar. It does the same thing for traps, except it banishes 2 cards from graveyard to infinitely negate traps. So it is a little bit more limited by the number of cards you have in grave. But ultimately, again, if you're in a position where you've got 8, 9, 10 cards in your graveyard, negating 4 and 5 traps, if you're playing a trap-based strategy, they're not going to be able to use 4 or 5 traps and not cripple themselves after being negated that number of times. Like, there's no way that's going to work. So if you're playing against Eldritch, you're playing against Labyrinth, you're playing against any other major trap-based strategy, Barkion becomes a must-have. He's not super core to the deck. You don't need to craft this card if you don't have it. I'm putting it in because I got it out of a pack, but it is really, really good in those specific matchups, so just be aware of that. He's not something you'll use every game, but he's a really powerful monster in the games where he is good. Raptide is just combo material. Summon it, check the top 5 cards of your deck, special summon a rock monster among them. It is really just a combo piece. That's pretty much it. We're not playing any wind monsters, so it doesn't get the second part of its effect. Shooting Razor Dragon. Shooting Razor Dragon's effect is sort of twofold. One, it serves its purpose as a level 7 synchro, a generic level 7, which means that something like your Analyzer plus a Magnet Warrior has some utility. And, well, it also modifies its level by sending a magnet from deck to graveyard, so you'll gain the advantage of modulating its level, usually by 4 downwards, so turning it into a level 3, the same level as all of your magnets. And in doing so, you're going to be sending something like your Adamancipator Crystal Dragid to the graveyard, or any other Magnet Warrior or tool that you need in the grave. You can basically choose to modulate its level by a few different options, so you have complete control over that. Depending on what tuners and things you have on board, you might want to change it. But usually you'll be sending a level 4 to satisfy Dragid's condition for having a water monster in graveyard, and then you're going to be using your newly level 3 Riser alongside one of your magnets to go into some of your Exceed monsters. So Razor Dragon serves a few purposes in the deck. Definitely would recommend playing him. Not necessarily core, but there's no reason not to. Dragide is busted, one of the biggest boss monsters of the deck. During your main phase, check the top 5 cards of your deck for any rock monsters, and for every rock monster you excavate, you bounce cards in your opponent's field back to the hand, non-targeting. It's disgusting. Secondary to that as well, if you have a water monster in your graveyard, your Dragite Crystal, then he also acts as a once per turn spell and trap card negate. So this guy is incredible. He is really, really useful. I already play him in Sword Souls just for the spell and trap card negate alone, so playing him in an actual rock deck has been a super refreshing change of pace, because he just completely dismantles opponents. Dragite is busted. Chaos Ruler. Chaos Ruler's only here for you to continue to mill the deck, maybe if you're going second. It just sends top 5 cards of your deck to the graveyard, essentially. Normally it would search for a light or dark monster, but we don't play any lights or darks, so we know that anything he hits, he's sending to the graveyard. So he's just a mill 5. Baron de Fleur is Baron de Fleur. I don't think this card needs any introduction. You don't use this card very often, but it is possible to summon it using one of your level 8s, one of your level 2s, or a combination of Analyzer and 2 magnets. So there are quite a few different ways where you can get this card out onto the field, and it is worth having in the deck for those situations. Levier. This card's basically here to recycle your banished Magnet Warriors. It's pretty much as simple as that. It doesn't come up very often, you don't have to play this card, but in a situation where you're going to turn 4, turn 5, then you're going to want to be able to recycle your Epsilons and your Deltas that are banished, considering Berserkion's effect itself is already going to be recycling the Alpha, Beta, Gamma. So being able to recycle these guys as well it's very useful. Having the option there is great, and there's no reason really not to play it. It's an SR. Gorgonic Guardian, this is one of your main negates, especially if you're on a more budget-friendly version. You might want to double up on this guy if you are playing on a budget and you maybe don't have things like Cicada King. You might want to double up on this guy. Basically, 2 level 3 rock type monsters summon it, so that's any of your magnets. Well, any of your small magnets, I should say. And it has 2 effects. Once per turn, detach a material to reduce a monster on the field's attack to 0. And then once per turn, you can negate the effect. You can target a monster on the field with 0 attack and destroy it. Also, the monster you reduce to 0 is negated. So you target a monster, reduce it to 0 and negate its effects. And then at any point during the turn, you can snipe a card on the field that has 0 attack. So it can be the card you reduced, or if your opponent's playing a strategy with other monsters at 0 attack, you can also do that. So Runic, for example, a lot of their searching cards have 0 attack points. If you want to start sniping them, you totally can. So Gorgonic Guardian's pretty interesting, especially if you're on a more free-to-play version. You might want to drop something like the Cicada King, which is our next monster, to do it, because this guy is literally just a monster negate. He does virtually the same thing. The only difference is he can be any level 3 monsters, which means that you can use your Shooting Razor for it. That's the only reason that he is here and preferable in some fashion to the Gorgonic Guardian, because you can use the Shooting Razor Dragon, but that is again in no way mandatory. Instead of going into a rank 3 here, you can simply use them instead to go into Raptite or something like that. So it's not mandatory, but I mean, it's a monster negate. If you have it, play it. If you don't have it, don't worry about it. Gallant Granite. If you are running a more budget-friendly version and you maybe don't have the generic URs, you might want to bump this guy up because he is really good. Detach a material to search your deck for any rock monster. That's nuts. You can search your deck for something like Nibiru. You can search your deck for your Adamantimators for combo pieces. You can search your deck for the Block Dragon. You can search your deck for a missing magnet if you're missing one of them. So the amount of things you can do with this guy is pretty nuts. So yeah, definitely you may even want to bump this guy up if you don't have all of these URs. And lastly is a generic link package. You're not in any way obligated to play these. I just play them because I have them and there's room for it. IP Masquerena, of course, being able to link summon during your opponent's turn. Unicorn, discard 1 to spin a card back to hand. Access code to pop a bunch of cards. Well, I mean, it's only really ever popping 1 card because you only really play Dark Link monsters. But it's basically here to get popping and then get attacking. And lastly, I think this one is more important than the others because you can spam monsters out so quickly. The Underworld Goddess, you basically link summon this, but one of the materials can be one of your opponent's monsters, so it's like an extra deck kaiju in a way. So I really like this card. It's removal of an opponent's card that doesn't begin a chain link. All of that is very useful depending on the opponent you're going against. So yeah, that is the extra deck. Like I said, a lot of these cards aren't necessarily mandatory. Like, I don't think you need to play any of these. Barkion is completely optional. So this is what I would say is mandatory to play. If you're on a more budget-friendly version, you can bump these guys up. You can maybe search for other Exceed monsters, Synchro monsters, Link monsters, just to suit your needs of what you actually have access to. But if you want to play it optimally, again, it is going to be best to fit in some of these better cards. Oh, don't want to spoil that one. That one's coming up soon. But this is how I've been playing it. Is it the best way of playing it? Maybe not. Is it a lot of fun? Definitely. Is it going to win you games? Absolutely. Are you going to enjoy playing it? 100%. So if you're a fan of Magnet Warriors, you're a fan of rock type decks, if you're a fan of Adamantimators, anything like that, this is the deck for you. Give it a try. And if you can make it better than what I've made it, let me know, either by leaving a comment or jumping into the Discord and just contacting me directly to let me know that I made a better version of this than you. You can either rub it in my face or we can sit and talk about it and see what's good and what's bad. But yes, I'm not going to ramble on anymore. I've already been rambling for 20 minutes now. So if you like what you're seeing and you want to see anything more like this, again, feel free to subscribe and like the video. Every little bit of interaction helps out. And again, we're getting so close to our goal of 1,000 subscribers that it's almost teasing us at this point. You know, we're so close. So if you haven't subscribed and you have watched this far, why not? You might as well. And with that, I'm going to be signing off and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.